hello, everybody out there in Facebook land, TikTok world, everywhere. There's going to be a clip of this going out to the world in some form, fashion, or another, social media wise, from YouTube to Instagram to all things in between. How are we doing out there today? Today, we're going to be talking about slabbed versus raw books. I think it's a good little debate, if you will. Welcome to the broadcast booth, everybody. I am Monty Anderson, your host here at 412 Productions, the art of Monty Anderson. Hopefully, you all are doing great out there. Hopefully, you had a great weekend, and you're not going to be working too hard for a Monday. Lack of sleep is going to play into today's show as well. But welcome to the broadcast booth, everybody. So, today's title is Slabbed or Nah. Slabbed or Nah. Slabbed comics versus your raw comics. Which do you prefer? I can see a benefit to both, and I have both, but not very many of one over the other. So, slabbed or not, talking about comic books. Do you like the slabbed comics that are graded for you? And hopefully that's the true grade and not like a rip-off grade that they decided just to give the book. Or do you like the raw comics that you can actually flip through and read? You know? Again, I have both, and I see the benefits of having slab comics over not. But on the same token, I want to be able to flip through that book whenever I want to, even if I have to put on cotton gloves or, you know, the nylon gloves or whatever they are that you see the doctors put on without all the stuff, all the powders and stuff on it. Because with that, with your graded book, as long as it's the book you sent in and it came back as the book you sent in, which meaning there's been a lot of controversy in the CGC realm that they have been taking the covers from pristine books and adding it to, white paged books of the older stuff to get a higher grade on this book. And they're keeping that book for themselves and end up selling it somewhere else later. And so the book that you get back isn't as pristine as the one that you sent in, meaning it could have yellow pages now. It could have a bend or a tear on the cover or ticks on the cover or things of that nature. So that's why I'm a little leery when it comes to the slabbed books anymore. Like I said, I've got some. I don't have many. I've got two, and I'm staring right at them right now. I've got a Batman 1989 from 6 of 2020, which it is the third printing, but it is a 9.6, and it is the first appearance of Punchline without her makeup, or with her makeup, one of the two. And then my very first comic book I ever read, my Uncanny X-Men number 163, and it's a 9.2. Now, I've got some books that I need to get slabbed because I don't want them to get destroyed out there. But then I come to the realization of, well, am I going to get ripped off by CGC? Which has happened time and time again with different people that I've heard horror stories from, in the different comic book communities that I'm out there. Well, that's awesome. That was the first one I ever read, and that one just stuck with me because I had to go to the dictionary to learn what some of these words meant in conjunction with what they were talking about in the comic book, and that's a great read. I mean, all the way around. Lots of action, lots of great stuff in this book. Of course, you see Wolverine and Nightcrawler back here in the back at the bar. Of course, they were at a bar, and then all hell breaks loose. So no, it's a great read, and I have it in the direct and the newsstand edition. Plus, I've got it slabbed. So this was actually a friend of mine's, but not this particular one. But a friend of mine actually let me borrow his comic books to read, and since he had a subscription to them out there in the boonies where I stayed with my grandparents, you know. So this one is just near and dear to my heart because this was the very first one that I ever read, and this is what got me hooked on comic books and Uncanny X Men, and I've been chasing them ever since. So yeah, and this one came out in 7 of 84. So in '84, what was I? 71 is 10, so I was 12 years old when this came out, and I was reading it for the first time, and it was just a great comic book to read. It all entails about they go to the bar to unwind and just be normal for a day, if you will, and uh, and then Juggernaut comes in on the scene into the bar, and all hell breaks loose. Nightcrawler back here is wanting to jump in and help Peter or Colossus, as the case may be here. Um, and Wolverine's like, "No, bud, just hold off. It's their fight. Let them. They're grown ass men. Let them do their thing." And so they do. And it gets to the point where Mario's about to take out Colossus, unfortunately. And Wolverine steps in by standing on the bar because in comic book lore, Wolverine is only what 5'2", 5'5", somewhere in that range. And so he stands on the bar looking Mario or Juggernaut eye to eye. And he's like, "It's over. We're done. You're done. Get out of the bar. We're done with all this." So Juggernaut does finally leave, and they all leave together. Not Juggernaut and them, but Colossus and Nightcrawler and Wolverine all leave together. But it's a great read, and it taught me so much to that that I had to go. Like I said, I had to go to the dictionary to learn more about what they were talking about in certain areas of the book. Because I'm a kid, I didn't care. I hated school, so I had to learn through comic books, if you will. So, do you like slab comics over raw comics? Which one do you prefer? Which one do you have the most of in your collection? If you were to look at my collection, which is an entire closet full of comic books, in boxes, and most of them, probably about 92%, are bagged and boarded. Um, Mine is the raw comic book because if you go to it all, I have two slabbed comic books completely total, and that's it. I'm not a big slab person, and I've never been a big slab person ever since it rolled out. And like I said, my other one's a 9.6, which is my Batman 1989 third printing of the first appearance of Punchline, which became Joker's new squeeze in this new era back in 2020, later on. So, but I understand the appeal to having a slab comic. Just like I've got Hulk 181, 182. I want to get those slabbed just for protection's sake. And I know putting them in a slab doesn't mean they're going to be protected for forever because a fire can destroy the slab. The slabs can be cracked and broken, all kinds of different things. But, you know, and in reality, I really wish they had these a little bit tighter of a seal in there, you know, because there is gappage in there. So the book can slide around, meaning that if it lands wrong or falls off your shelf or whatever, you have the chance to destroy the book inside, like bend a corner if it lands just hard enough on a corner or something like that. So, but it's supposedly pressed in there pretty good where it's not supposed to be able to move, period, at all. And it really doesn't move as I flip it around and all that good stuff. then again, when it comes down to it, like I said, I've heard the horror stories where CGC, the um, it depends on what kind of advice you're talking about. Um, I don't know what age group we're talking about here, Zach. That's the first full Wolverine. Yes, Dennis. The cameo appearances in 180, which I do not have. I used to have it, but that's a long, drawn out story, but it's not really. And I used to have 180, 181 before, um, but now I've got 181, 182, which is the first full appearance in 181, and then another cameo appearance in 182. 180 was the first full cameo appearance of Wolverine in the comics. And so with that, 181 becomes the most expensive out of the books. Um, had they done more than just a one panel at the end of 180, like had they done 2 pages or something like that, that would have been considered the first full. And that one would be worth more than the 181. Um, but a potential of a really nice, pristine, almost mint copy. I think the record sale on that one was like $135,000 or something like that. But that was like a 9.6 or a 9.8 or something like that. And see, I do both. I used to have over like 40,000 sports cards. I sold those off here, probably about a year and a half ago. Now to some guy up in New York, and I get into it a little bit here and there. I'll buy a box. We do a box break here every now and again. Not like you see, where people are putting in bids and stuff like that for a slot and all that stuff. I just open up boxes because like I've got I don't know where they went. I've got some Garbage Pail Kids, the Bookworm editions running around here somewhere that I temporarily open up every now and again. Um, but we end up pulling some good cards every now and again. We pulled a nice holographic Micah Parsons, limited to 199, and we got number 115 out of that one. So that one was pretty cool. Out of the Score Panini box 2023, 2022, 2022 or 2023 box. I can't remember which one right off the top of my head, but that was fun and it was good. It was awesome to have that card, even though he's not with our team anymore, the Dallas Cowboys, where he should still be. But things happen. People chase the money, even though he said, "Hey, I'll take less and stay where I'm at." No, you won't. And now he's doing what he did in Dallas and not doing much, especially this last year. But I get it. You want that money, you want that prestige. But yeah, I used to do sports cards on a regular basis, but I kind of stopped doing that because only if you find the certain high dollar cards are you going to be even making any profit off of that. In my comic books, I'm in the process of getting ready to start selling those off. Like I said, I've been bagging and boarding them, and I picked up a collection probably a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, of nearly it was a little over 3,000 comics, mainly in the golden or not golden, the Bronze Age, which is 1974 to 1982, I think. I think that's the era, and so and plus a little older ones than that, but and out of all of those, there's probably maybe 70 that could be slabbed easy and protect their value. Just like I've already put them back in the boxes. Um, the first appearance of Thanos, which is a $500 book, easy on its own, and it's now autographed by Jim Starlin, the creator of Thanos. So, oh well, thank you. Are you a Marvel DC fan? I am a Marvel fan first, with DC coming in a close second, with only one character. Well, technically, kind of two, but Batman and the Batman Who Laughs. And then I have a ton of love for independent comics because me being an artist and an independent comic book artist and draw stuff like this, this is a commission piece right here. This is one of my hand done pieces. I don't do AI or anything like that. This is all hand done. This is a mashup of a Dreki and a Wolver from God of War. Now, on that question, Storm or Phoenix? It depends. Good morning, y'all. 420. Hello, ballerina. What's going on? Yes, you hit it at 420. I bet you're doing the same thing there too, aren't you? Storm or Phoenix? Or Storm versus Phoenix? Storm, I get it. She has all the elements of the world at her disposal. But Phoenix, being the dark telepath that she is, would overtake Storm easy, unfortunately. I did. From Turok to Magnus Robot Fighter to who else did they have? They had a ton of people over in Valiant. Valiant was one of those hit or miss comic series or comic companies out there because with Ninjak and things like that, they had some great characters, but sometimes the writing was just so horrible that you couldn't get into it. From Marvel, the '97, such as Starbrand and DHP, I believe is what it was. There was another one, Night Mask. Yes. Plus, he also had his own company for a bit after he left the editor in chief of Marvel. I met him a couple of different times, especially with the Warriors of Plasm. Whenever he did that whole series, that was a pretty cool series. I liked that one. Um, that was very interesting stuff that he put out with I can't remember the artist, but he did some cool stuff. Oh, okay, cool, very awesome. That's awesome, and that's cool that the world is that small. Um, because like Brian Denham, who started out as an independent comic back in the '90s, then he got pulled into the ranks of Image Comics and started doing a bunch of stuff for them. Never got his project off the ground, like they said they were going to promise him to do. Um, yes, Solar and Man of War were good ones. I liked Turok more than I liked any of the other ones, just because it was more reality based. You know, you do like those characters that don't have any superpowers, and I know that EXO is basically a man in a suit. Bart Sears made that one very awesome in the artwork, and he did so many other things. Uh, of course, the X Men and the Savage Lands with Kazar. Oh, absolutely. You're talking to an X Men fanatic here, and and I hate that they destroyed the universe of the Uncanny X Men in when they killed this series, Volume One from 1963 to 2002, and then they re brought Volume Two in, brought Volume Three in. I think they're up to Volume Seven. I don't remember what they're up to now, but they've changed the character so much that it's crazy. And Kazar even had his own book for a hot minute. I think he had two different volumes of Kazar in the Savage Land, and maybe even three, because I know that they had one in the either the late 70s or early 80s, and then they had another one in the somewhere in the 2000s. I can't remember exactly which uh, area that was. But don't forget to like, share, and follow while you're here. And if you hit that little, if you go to my profile right up here, you can go up there and you can see that little bell. And if you click on that bell, you can switch everything to all, and it will show you when I post a live or go live or post on my TikTok as well. Um, but yeah, the Dark Phoenix saga was great. There's been so many great series that have run through the X Men that it's just amazing how they can just destroy it all in one spot. Scott Summers was hot. I figured you would have went for Havoc, his brother, you know, or Cable, his son from the future, and so on and so forth. But no, I guess I mean if you're talking about from the movie standpoint or from the comic book standpoint, because that's two different beings, you know. And it's just like Famke Janssen playing, Jean Grey. So a very great person, and she did a great overall job with it all. And then you've got Rebecca Romaine, you know, and so on and so forth in the original series, not the next one over, which was good too. And some of those were campy when it came to the X Men movies, since they were out of the MCU continuity. And like Sabretooth is an idiot in those series, and it's just like he's not an idiot is the problem, you know. Mm-hmm. Famous tagline by Professor Charles Xavier. Another great telepath with a lot to offer, but they basically just kind of cut his character at one aspect and going into the astral realm where he can actually still physically move when he's in your mind instead of being in a wheelchair bound. Yes. But no, it's in the comic book realm, you got it all. You've got your true crime, you've got your fantasy, you've got your dark romance, you've got your horror, you've got your sci-fi, and sometimes it's all in one book, you know. It's just the minds that create these books out there. Depends, Buck or Doe. And are we talking about like wrestling it down like like a steer, like a steer wrestling type of a situation? Well, it wouldn't take very long in my house because I would have the upper hand. I know where I'm going, and it doesn't. So I ain't afraid of no buck. Let him come on. I'll grab him by the horns and roll him down. So Storm is your go to. Why is Storm your go to? Land O'Lakes. And which version of Storm? Because you got the Storm of the beginning, which is whenever she first joined the crew in issue 96, somewhere in that range. And then of course the the big blow up book. She is beautiful. She's an Amazonian goddess. She is beautiful. Um See, I was always reminisce of her without her powers, with the mohawk. Aurora Monroe, yes, my oldest child. Middle name is a derivative of Aurora, like Aurora Borealis, but it was technically supposed to be read the Watchmen 12 book series first? Came out in 1980. Yes, I did. Great series by, another Miller creation. And great stuff. Um, and even the movie was good. It could have been a little bit longer for my taste, to encompass a little bit of more of the comic book in there. But I understand they can't get it all in there. Just like the books with Lord of the Rings, the movies, and all that stuff, they come close, but there's still things that they can't do. But yes, great series, and even the stuff after, the stuff that's called the Watchmen before Watchmen, I believe is what it was. Great stuff there too. I haven't watched the TV series that they made, but I'm going to. Yes, yes, yes. Alan Moore is one of those great minds out there. Uh, there's so many great minds when it comes to the comic book world. It's crazy. Even some of the new people in the independent side of things, um, and the guys that are doing their own stuff on a regular basis. Isaac Bell, another great mind out there when it comes to the comic book world. His artwork is phenomenal. And some of my favorites, Ja Lee, did the Hellshock series for Image Comics, his own title. Did a lot of stuff for Marvel under Namor, uh, Inhumans. He did some X-Men stuff. He did Stephen King's The Dark Tower series. Did you like the Eternals movie? It was okay. I'm not going to say it was a great movie. It was just a filler movie. Any thoughts on Jolly Jack Kirby? Jack Kirby. Okay, but let me finish the Eternals. That was It was a good movie, and it's one of those filler movies. It's kind of like um, the Ten Rings, Shai Chang, and that one. I mean, I liked it, and there was just elements of it that I wish again would have been a little different. But I understood what the movie was in there for, you know. And but it was a good movie, and I liked it, like I said. And I just wish there was a little bit more to it, and that happens a lot with a lot of the Marvel movies, and I understand where they're going with them because you can only tell a story to a certain point, and whenever they pull in two or three different stories at the same time and try to meld them together, it hurts the continuity of it sometimes. But Jack Kirby, great dude all the way around, phenomenal artwork. And Stan Lee even created this little character. These are my t-shirts, by the way. Created this little character, Mr. Howard the Duck, after Jack Kirby's likeness. An angry, angsty, cigar-smoking duck was based off of Jack Kirby. But Jack Kirby is the master when it comes to a lot of the stuff that we see today. And you still see a lot of it emulated in today's society, you know. Well, it sounds like you need some new friends, absolutely 100% Land O'Lakes. Just because, you've got to find your people. You got to find your tribe, as they call it nowadays. And, I mean, I don't know what you young kids call it. Uh, Howard the Duck, the first Marvel movie ever, yes. Nah, they're good. Well, they need to geek out with you then. Go nerd out with you. But yes, that was a great movie. I loved that movie too. Um, it was one of those fun campy movies, and I love the animatronics with it more so than the CGI duck that they have now portraying Howard the Duck. and uh, and so yeah, that was a great movie. And again, my favorite comic book of all time is the Uncanny X Men, hands down. Um, Absolutely. And I've loved it ever since I picked up that first comic book right there, number 163. And best Marvel movie, oof, that's a tough call. Let me think. Best Marvel movie all the way around. Mm-mm-mm. I'm not a big Thor guy, so Thors weren't really a thing for me. Captain America, I'm not a Captain America guy. And see, I can't even say the X Men movies. There's been some good ones in there, but they haven't been the greatest. You know, yeah, the Future Past was a good one. Man, the Spider Mans have been good, and I've liked them all. Not just specific ones. Guardians or Avengers. Again, tough call, but I would have to go with Guardians of the Galaxy right there over the Avengers. I know that's a lot of people's hate right there because they would go the Avengers, but no. The Avengers, I've got a whole run of those comic books in there. The Avengers is just one of those crews that is just like you've got the world's mightiest superheroes on one team, but yet they barely can beat one person that they fight whenever they're all together. It makes no sense in the comic book sometimes. But man, trying to pick one Marvel comic movie that's the greatest of them all, I don't know. That's a tough call because there's been so many, and I'm not just talking about on the MCU continuity that we have now, but I'm talking about past stuff as well that is in the Sony universe or even Paramount or MGM before they started going into one sector of movie making. So I was happy with Scarlett Johansson offed herself. Why? Why would you be happy about Black Widow offing herself to save the universe? Um, has there ever been a Daredevil movie? There was an old Daredevil TV show before the TV show that you see now, but there has not been a Daredevil movie. There's been an Elektra. Well, no, that is correct. That is incorrect. There is a Daredevil movie that starred Ben Affleck. It was horrible, terrible, and the Elektra movies weren't horrible as bad as the Daredevil movie that he was in, but um, those that's the only one that I can think of as a Daredevil movie that was out there with Ben Affleck, and that was in the mid 2000s, somewhere in that range, I think it was. And with um, him playing the star and then Jennifer Garner playing Elektra, I would have chosen a different person to play Elektra. Just me. She's a great actress, but not her role. I'm sorry. Just wasn't it just wasn't meant for her. She's not that badass. Okay. Um yeah, they need to come up, but Charlie Cox, who portrays, you know, um Daredevil in the TV series, he's going to be in several of the new movies coming out. just like Barenthal is going to be the Punisher in several of the movies, especially with Spider-Man movie, and I think he's possibly in this new Avengers movie, um, in game or whatever it's called, um, the one where Downey Jr. is playing Doctor Doom instead of Tony Stark, you know, and so those are the interesting things as it moves forward into the continuity of everything. Um, Heroes become villains, you know. But yes, a Daredevil movie. I mean, I let's put this one to bed. I have liked all of the Netflix series that they created. The Defenders, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Daredevil, Punisher. I haven't watched Madam Web yet, so that one's still up in the air for me. I haven't watched it yet. But all of those TV series that they created and went more than one season long were great. You know, even Iron Fist that everybody hated on. It was just they were just great shows to watch all the way around, and a lot of people just didn't give them enough credit. You know, and I don't understand why there was so much hate on them, especially Iron Fist. Um, Luke Cage got almost as much hate as Iron Fist did. The Defenders ended up, you know, what up, Casey? Welcome to the broadcast booth. You got your coffee in hand? And so, why they got so much hate for those shows, I don't know. So many people just didn't like them for whatever reason, and I enjoyed them. You know, I watched them. I binge watched them. That's how much I liked them. Now, the one that I haven't seen is the Barenthal Punisher yet, which is on my to watch list. I haven't got there yet, and I am just going to bide my time because I know there's more coming. And that makes sense. That I did that the other day, not yesterday, the day before. I actually, and I still didn't feel like I got enough sleep, but didn't wake up until like 6, you know, which is very unusual for me. So, so we've been talking about Casey. We've been talking about comic books, Slabbed versus Nah, which is Slab Comics right here versus your regular comics that you can still read. And then we got into comic book movies and so on and so forth. So I'm just getting you caught up with what we're talking about right now. And the TV series that they create off of the comic books, as long as they do them correctly and keep them in the same continuity of the flow of things, they're good. But once they start throwing in all this, trying to take this story with this story with this story, and then trying to put it all together, it doesn't work. So as long as they can keep the continuity of the books in with, you know, a comic version out there somewhere, it tends to work out better than trying to jumble it all together and go all crazy like they do in some of the movies. Let's take Suicide Squad for example. Terrible movie. Great actors in it, actresses, but terrible movie all the way around. They tried to do too much. They tried to push too much of an agenda into it as far as trying to introduce all the characters at once. Just do the movie. And then if you want people to know about the characters, do their solos, you know, prior to them getting locked up in Arkham Asylum. You know. But once they try to, this is this character, and then you take a 5 minute glimpse into their life of what they did, and then this character, a 5 minute glimpse into their life. and you've got 6 characters, well, there went 30 minutes of your movie or more, depending on which character. So, real fast. Slabbing is huge in coins and ball cards, but I don't own any or want to own any slabbed. Okay, cool. See, and that's the stuff that I want to know because I do want to slab a few of mine. Like I said, Hulk 181, 182, but I'm nervous with it only because of the horror stories that I've heard. And you can find them out there, if you want to know what those horror stories are with CGC. And then if you go with one of the not reputable ones like PSA or things like that that are getting into the comic book side of things, people don't like them as much for whatever reason. Um, I figured that if they are a company that is slabbing their comic cards or coins, then as long as they're doing a good job, why are we hating on them? Why are we not giving them as much love as we give to CGC? Just because CGC's been around longer? That makes no sense. If the other company is doing just as good a job or better and not ripping people off by changing out covers or changing out interior pages or things of that nature, then why can't they get a fair shake? Exactly. And that's one of the big things that that you hear about, um, comic books whenever they go in. They get changed out for this, for that, or you get something that's not the quality that you actually sent in, you know. And that's a terrible thing to happen, and especially for the people that have had it happen to them before. And me, I would be documenting every page of that comic book, and then I would open up that slab when it came back, and I would inspect it all. Um, but you know, and a lot of people will break open their slabs and get them resubmitted, after they've been pressed and cleaned, things of that nature. But he did say cards, but not comics have more cards, but comics have more to be graded. They have interiors that can have pages missing or torn out. Plus, it's all about the not yet, Casey. We're only at 93. Plus, you have to look at the yellowing of the pages. Are they more white than they are yellow? Are they a tannish color? There's all kinds of variables that go into a comic book over a card. And now we're at 3.5. We went from 93 to 3.5. So there you go. You worked. It worked. Just saying it out loud. Um, and I get it because there's spine ticks, there's corner rolls, there's uh, tears and bends and anything else uh, to look at whenever you get a comic book graded. And that's why I kind of dig the whole getting it graded at a convention because you can technically almost be standing right there the whole time if you wanted to while they graded the comic and went through it, you know. Even though it's a quick grade, it's still a grade on the comic. And so I've thought about doing that at some different comic books whenever I get going back to conventions for my booth. But then it's like, well, I don't want to spend my whole time standing over there watching them grade the comic book while I've got artwork to sell, you know? And so it's a catch 22 with it all. And most of the ones I go to don't have a CGC grader right there in house. Um, Unfortunately, I haven't found one yet. I don't even think there was one at the Space Con in San Antonio, which I'm kind of surprised that there wasn't. There could have been, and I just didn't know about it. But because I would have gotten, the first Thanos in Iron Man 55 after it got signed, I would have got it slabbed, to keep it protected in the grade that it is now. Which I don't know what kind of grade it is right now, but it's very fine plus. Um, I'm not going to say it's near mint because there's hardly anything out there that's near mint, even coming out of the printer. Cards have been counterfeited and submitted, and I think comics don't have that problem, do they? No, they do. You can get a counterfeit comic easy, and sometimes the facsimile comic cover or comic book gets misinterpreted as the original, and then it gets through as that grade. But yes, there are counterfeit comics out there uh, on a regular basis. And you see a lot of reprints of things when it comes to comics as well. And that's where they get counterfeited on that note. So, yes, they can be counterfeited just like coins can be counterfeited. Like you said, baseball cards, football cards, any kind of card can be counterfeited. Uh, if you wanted it bad enough to be counterfeited, you could get it counterfeited, you know. And no, TikTok, this is for entertainment purposes only, and we are not talking about counterfeiting anything. Um, we don't want that restriction to pop up here in a little bit. And so, you know, that's where you hope that you're getting from a reputable seller that has the authentic card or comic or whatever you're buying. Because unfortunately, you see it out there one too many times that somebody's selling something that they don't actually own. You know, you see it on Facebook Marketplace, you see it on Macari, you see it on eBay. I see all these horror stories. I'm in several different groups, from vintage Star Wars group action figures to comic book groups and so on and so forth. So I get to see a lot of horror stories that float through on what has happened to them, or you know, I bought this and thought it was the original thing, but as I'm looking, I can't find this exact thing, and so then the people in the group are like, "Huh, that's a counterfeit, buddy," you know, and then they're like, "Well, but sometimes some counterfeits are worth more," you know. Cards have dot pattern printing. Do comics have dot pattern printing? Yes, yeah, pretty much the print process is pretty much the same when it comes to cards over because you got to think most everybody uses the same printers when it comes to their stuff. Now there's some new technology when it comes to comic books rolling out um, that is making it a little different than the card companies, but everybody uses the same printing method. And if you were to zoom in really close on this one, in that orange right there, you would see the points that are in there, how it prints out. Um, but yes, the whole dot printing process, and that's why. Yeah, he's right here. This one, Micah Parsons, right there, though I was talking about earlier. Number 115 out of 199. Still sharp corners. I've got to get it in its hard container. But yeah, right there, right there. With his regular card. Dun, dun, dun. Side by side. Same card, just a different concept. It looks a lot like. I was going to say it looks a lot like my autograph card over there of Micah Parsons, but it's not. It is a little different. We're just trying to keep them protected. Those type of things. Right there. Okay, we're still on that. All right, so yeah, a lot of the printing methods are the same when it comes to comic books and cards and even books. You but everything uses the same type of print method anymore when it comes to certain things. Now you're getting the other ones that are coming out with a more, not so much dot printing as the case may be, more smooth, if you will, and then it looks a little iffy on those notes. But the printing processes are changing on a regular basis, so we could see the point where the point goes away, the point system goes away completely. You know, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. over the years as things keep progressing. Everything just progresses into something better. And if you look at the old cards from back in the day, um, and comic books from back in the day, as opposed to what they are now, the quality is so much better. Obviously, as a matter of fact, I do. I've got um, first and second prints of number 1 through 15, I think, and then it's sporadic after that what I've got. But I do have the originals from the 1970s when it comes to the comic books from Marvel, and they're bagged and boarded and in the closet over here. Um, so yes, and again, I have first and second print. The first printing has the barcode on it. The second print has the black out where the barcode should be. Um, and they're all in pretty good shape. I think there's only a couple in there that aren't that great. But again, another book that I would like to get slabbed as issue number 1 um, from that era. And I've got, like I said, I've got so many comic books. It'd be hard pressed to say no, I don't have that one. Now there are certain runs that I don't have a complete run of. Uncanny X Men being one of them, but I have a majority of them. Yeah, the variants of the 35-cent variants. Um, yes, absolutely, and several comic books did that, and a lot of people are looking for those. Plus, they had the Marx Jeweler inserts in some of them as well, and so a lot of people look out for those too. And me, I'm in the process of looking for the Mexican version, the Hispanic. I guess I can't say Mexican. The Hispanic version of the Uncanny X Men, and that is one of those things. What's up, man? DK's with us, and those are a lot more expensive. I was noticing because I did find a small run of them, which I'll probably never have the complete run of them. Uh, but I found a small run of them. I think it was on Macari, might have been eBay. I can't remember, but it was quite a penny for those. And it was just like, whew, what makes them so special other than they're 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 in the Spanish language. I mean, they are completely different too, the looks. So, but that's something that I'm seeking after is the whole uh, Hispanic Uncanny X Men line as well. So hopefully I'll be able to find those at a relatively good price. I might just have to take a trip down there and be like, hey, comic books, where are we going? Back alley? Forget it. I need my kidney. Those type of things. Just kidding. Just kidding. Um, but no, no, I love comic books, and the how it takes you away. It's just like people loving books. These are books, and you get a whole series of them. You know that tell a story from start to finish. Whereas you get your book series, you got to read this one whole book. You got to read this whole book. Well, this one I'm jumping from this comic book to this comic book to this comic book to this comic book to this comic book. I got the whole story, but I'm in different universes. I mean, it's all the same universe, but it's in this comic book. It's Uncanny X Men. It's in X Factor. It's in the Avengers. It's in Spider Man. It's in so on and so forth. So I'm getting to see all these different aspects of different comic books that are telling the same story of this specific you know storyline, and so you're not just stuck in one spot, like you are with a book, and it runs gambit in all of the different ones. And so you got to collect them all at the same time too, so you can get the whole story. So, and that makes it fun. And Let's get back to my story about having 180, 181. Back in the day, I used to have Uncanny X-Men #1 as well from 1963. That was the most I'd ever spent on a comic book in my life, $800. And it came down to the point of I was probably more than 65 issues away from having the entire run from when it ended in 2002 and volume 1, 1963 to 2002, 584 comic books, I believe. And I was only 65, maybe about 70 issues away from having the entire run. And got involved with a woman. And then those comic books became the down payment of a house I no longer live in or to a woman I'm no longer married to. And that included all of my autographed comics, my Stan Lee autographs, my Jim Lee autographs in the Marvel Continuity universe. Okay. Never store your comic books without being bagged and boarded. Absolutely not. They've got to be bagged and boarded. Um, and then they're stored in the typical comic book boxes, the long white boxes. I do have a bunch of short white boxes too that are over on that side of the room, underneath my desk over there. And then the rest of them are in the closet, stacked about 4 foot tall. I think they stop about right here. If I had to guess. I'm just gonna take a quick gander real fast. Yeah, I am correct. It stops about right here, and about right there, which is about 4 foot tall. If I were to break out my tape measure correctly, 4 foot tall, 48 inches, right there, 4 foot tall. And um, then from there, they're stacked on top of each other. Now, I do want to build bookshelves that hold each individual box so that the box is not resting on top of the other box, like you see so many places do. And a lot of people, that's how their books start to get damaged over time because those comics weigh a lot. And when you have like 3 or 4 boxes stacked on top of each other, that's just pressing all that weight on that bottom box. And it's just caving it in year after year, which eventually it will get down on top of the boards, and then eventually a little bit farther, and then until, you know, disaster strikes. So the best form is to have their own cubicles for the boxes, you know. Me, I'm a reader and enjoy and reread of them, and I've got 2 long boxes of them. I got that. Um, I wish I just had 2 long boxes of them. I like to read mine as well. That's why I don't have many of them slabbed, because how am I going to read this? How am I going to? I can't flip through the pages. All that good stuff. Um, and so yes, I do tend to go back and reread every now and again, certain ones, especially the Uncanny X-Men line. But yeah, no, I probably got 30 comic books or 30 boxes of comics, mostly in the long boxes. So, you know, you can do the math on that. I think I've got. Can't even tell you like right off the top of my head. But I've got a little bit of everything. Just like in Image Comics, some of my favorite stuff over there, besides Spawn, which is the big kicker for everybody. Um, Jim Lee's works over there, Wildcats and Stormwatch and all that stuff. But like Prophet by Rob Liefeld. Um, let's see, Hell Shop by Ja Lee, of course. Uh, and then so on and so forth, like Deathstroke. No, not Deathstroke. What was his name? Crap, he was a military type that Jim Lee created. I can't remember what his name is right off the top of my head. Um, but the covers were iconic. The interiors were great. And then Whenever Steve Platt came on the scene with he did Moon Knight. I was going to say Moon Knight, but with Prophet and things like that, phenomenal artwork, outrageous, outlandish artwork. But it's awesome, 100% on that. And no, it wasn't Death Watch. And thanks for stopping in, dear. I appreciate you. And I saw it come through, and I'll get to it. Um, Death Blow. That's who it was. Death Blow. And very iconic, great covers. Military, and me being ex-military, that resonated with me. And a lot of Jim Lee's stuff has a lot of ex-military stuff in it, military-minded people and things like that. Uh, and so it that one resonated with me a lot, and so I liked that one. And unfortunately, that one ended. You know, so as many of them did, and especially whenever he jumped ship from Image and went back to DC comic books, and got back with them. A long box holds roughly 300 comics. Your um, smaller comic book box, the half size, generally holds about 150. So, and I think I'm sitting on 15 long boxes, maybe 20 long boxes in uh, my closet right now. So, if I had to guess. And then I've got, the rest of them are the smaller boxes. So, and if you don't bag and board them, you can actually get more into the comic boxes, but then you're starting to destroy the comics whenever you're not bagging and boarding them and keeping them in the long boxes or the boxes in general. Um, Now, if you're pressing a book yourself, that's a different story, and you just want to get it out of that and get it pressed down to where after many years of it being pressed down, it will at that point um, start to flatten it back out the way it's supposed to be, or you can just have it professionally flattened and done. Because that's what I have to have done with the 181, 182. I have to get them repressed, and at that point in time, they've just got a tiny little roll happening at the spine because of the way they were stored originally. So I got to get that fixed, which isn't that big of a deal. I could probably do it myself, but I just don't want to destroy the comic book. If that makes any sense. So, um, but yeah, I will be looking into that later on as well. Because that's another thing that CGC does is they do professional pressing and things of that nature. They're supposedly clean them too if you want that done, as far as the cover goes. So, but no, I'm looking forward to all that whenever I do get it taken care of and happen to get it done. Um, just because it's just money and time, you know, and then do I want to sit on like 2 to 3 months of it not coming back, and then checking the progress of it. Hey, where's that? Hey, where's that? Hey, where's that? And then 5 months later it shows up. Um, I know it's not that long, but I've heard again horror stories when it comes to that. So yes, sir, 16.7 to be exact. Mucho apreciado. Um, but I'll be setting back up for some more ghost hunts as well, some paranormal stuff. My house is haunted. For those of you who don't know, I do live in a haunted house. How do you press down and flatten them, stack heavier books on them? You can do that, but you just got to make sure everything's already starting to go that flat route. Uh, the e- I say the easiest way. The way that they tell you to do it is basically get you a tote, get you a spot to raise your comic book out of the water of this tote, and then place your comic book inside of um, a towel basically, and then put it all that into a light source that's going to draw the heat and start condensation happening. And then at that point, then you take and get you a heat press, like a t-shirt press, after like 12 to 24 hours of it soaking, not soaking, but getting that humidity back into the paper. And then you take it on the heat press and press it down for like 30 seconds or something like that, um, at like 350 degrees. And then you lift it up after you put parchment paper over the top of on the top and bottom of the book, and then you press it, and then it should uh, flatten that edge back down. There's a whole processes out there on YouTube that you can find on the process of pressing a comic book. But again, I don't want to screw up a potential $10,000 comic book um, by doing it myself, and then oops, I missed a step. Even though I've watched the videos a million times and written down and printed out, and it's just like it still makes me nervous. I'm not gonna say it scares me, but it makes me nervous. You know, and I just don't want to screw up a book that could be worth $10,000 to $12,000. Absolutely not. So let a professional do it. And so there's lots of things that I've been thinking about, when it comes to that, because there's several that I would like to get pressed, slabbed, and on display. But then again, you don't want them in direct sunlight either, because then it'll start eating away off their cover, start to fade and deteriorate the cover. So, and that's why I don't understand comic book stores that have, comic books in full display of light, because it's already starting to destroy the comic book, especially if it's an older comic book. Um, that's why you see most comic book stores that don't even have any windows on their store, just because the light destroys the comic books. But those that have the glass fronts on their comic stores and things like that, and then just let the sunshine in on their stuff on a regular basis, those I question. Because even putting a poster up in the window, for whatever your card game, or this new comic book coming out, or whatever, isn't stopping the light coming into your store. Yes, I know you want bright and visibility, but get you some better lights inside. You know. Yes, absolutely. And just like your car, after a while, if your car wasn't painted properly, it's going to start eroding that clear coat off, and then there goes your paint, because the sun is eroding that away, so on and so forth. So sun is a detriment to anything that has a printed surface, painted, printed, whatever. And that's why you see signs that are in direct sunlight on a regular basis that look like shit, because that sun is just pounding on them day on either side, day and night, and it's just cooking that sign. There's a few here in town that they need to get redone, and obviously they need a UV protectant on it, because the location of their store is like east facing or west facing, and so it's getting the sun one way or the other, and it's just cooking that sign as it's going, just baking it as the sun goes by us, or as we go by the sun, because the sun doesn't move, it's stationary, blah blah blah. And then, is the earth flat or is it round? We're not getting into that debate. um but no, it's everything can be redone, because there's even touch ups that they can do on certain covers, for from certain people. And it's just like those, um, the historians that restore all the old paintings and stuff like that back to their luster and gives them the color back, because the stuff that they were sealed in, the lacquer that they were sealed in, yellows over time. And so once they remove that lacquer and put on a new sheen over the top of it, it looks like a brand new painting all over again. And so, and they can do that. They can restore comic books just like that. But then that does affect the grade because they have to put in all that information that, hey, we did this, hey, we did that, we pressed, we cleaned, we, you know, retouched up this surface. So is it still the original cover? Well, yes, but they had to do this many steps to get it to pristine look again. So that does affect the value when it comes to a point grade. And just like they say, whenever you get any writing on a comic book other than the signature from somebody, that will take a point off of your grading. So if it was a 9.6, you're getting it at an 8.6, or maybe even a closer to a 9, without the dropping a point. They just take the whatever point off of that marking that was on there. So unless it's a key issue, then they're just looking at the overall presentation. Now, if it was colored on completely by a marker or something like that all over the front cover, then they're going to take it down to like a 0.5, because, hey, it's a key issue, but someone wrote all over the front cover of this. And so those type of things. There's a lot of things, key factors that you have to take into account. And it's just like whenever you're getting a card graded or a coin graded and things like that. And it's just like an action figure that you can get graded. You can get VHS tapes graded now, which is kind of ridiculous in my opinion, but whatever. Um, it, if you want something graded, you can get it graded. You know, if you wanted your toenails graded, you could send those in to somebody, and they'll send you a grade back. You know, on those. But I'm kidding. I'm well. I might not be kidding. I don't know. I haven't seen it, but with all of the um, occult stuff out there, you possibly could get a grade on a monkey's paw or something like that. I don't know. A voodoo doll at a 9.8, still usable on anyone you want. It's just like the action figure grades that you get. You get 90s or 80s or 75s or whatever. It's a whole different price, or it's a whole different grading system than it is for comic books and cards and coins. I mean, it's closer to coin than it is to the comic book or the card sector because the coin gives you a 96 or a a whatever grade, and that's just like the action figures. You get a grade from those as well. So I don't know. I don't grade. I know what the overall condition is thereof, and it's just like, um, well, this is my opinion. Since it's not a graded book, this is as close as a grade as I can give you. You know, and if you go out there, you can find a grade guiding system that lets you know, hey, if you've got this, if you've got this, if you've got this, this is what it will come back as. A very fine, a near mint, a good, a fine, all that good stuff. And that doesn't give you a 9.6 or a 9.8 or those type numbers. It just gives you a close representation of, hey, this is a fine comic book. This is what it would come back as a grade point, potential, all that good stuff. And so, to each their own. It's a discernment. It's just like when you buy something that is already graded for you, or they put a potential that could potentially come back at this grade. That's just their assumption and guess on what it could come back because, if they're not looking at the overall condition of the book and just looking at the cover, you know, and then they don't flip it over and, oh, there's a big crease in the back cover, those type of things. Especially if it's already bagged and boarded. They're not looking at the back. They're just looking at the front. And they're like, okay, approximately you can get a 9.2. Take it out. It's got a big rip in it. It's like, no, you're looking at about a 6 point now. And so, yeah, many, many different factors take into account on that stuff. So, I hope you all have a great day out there. I got some animals to tend to because I do homestead as well. So, and they're starting to peek up and talk to me. I can hear them in the next room. But you all have a great day. And as I like to say as I leave you, and don't forget to like, share, and follow. But that's not what I usually say. We will catch you on the flip side. Have a good day, everybody.